Hi everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are going to be creating a punch art clipboard, and to dress this up I'm going to be using the brand new calendar funds. Here is a list of all the supplies that I used on today's card. You can either grab your supplies and make this card along with me, or you can reference back here if you have any other questions. So here's a look at the brand new calendar fun stamp set. Now this is going to be perfect for all of you who like to make calendars for Christmas presents or any other type of presents, or if you're a planner person. I really envy you. I want to be a planner person, but I just do not have the time. But this set is perfect for that. And one of the things that makes this stamp set so unique is this little portion of it right down here. You've got all these little icons to add into your pages. I've got a still shot of it for you, so we can take a closer look at it. It's got all your holidays covered. It's got birthdays, it's got arrows, it's got all the different sports icons. It has workout, doctor's appointment, grocery shopping, coffee, little speech bubbles and little thought bubbles. You name it, it's got it. But it also has all the social media icons right in the top right hand corner, which is great if you're on like a design team, or if you just need to remember to post certain things to certain social media outlets. This stamp set has you covered. So moving on to the actual card. I started with an A2 white top folding card base, and then I just essentially cut a craft mat, so 4 inches by 5 1/4. Then I'm just rounding all the corners. This is going to be the base of my clipboard. You can see it's just a mat for my card base at this point. But next up I needed to create that little holder that holds your papers on the clipboard. Now I have this bookmark die that I'm going to be using and doing just a little bit of selective die cutting here. I don't want to cut any more than where my two cutting plates meet, and that's just going to apply pressure right to the top of that. I don't want to cut all the way through, but I'll run that through my die cutting machine. Now if you don't have a die like this, you could look at any other bookmark dies you might have just for that top shape. If you don't have a bookmark, you could look at your tag dies. If you don't have tag dies, you could cut a half circle, whether with a punch or with a die. You could also just cut a triangle and then punch a hole in the top of it. It really is that simple, and what I would suggest doing with any punch art card is search your stash before you go and buy a certain product just to make that one item. These are already items I had on hand, but I made them work for me. So I sliced off the bottom of that bookmark that I cut, and then I'm just going to round the corners on those two little bottom prongs, and I'm going to make sure that I get them as close as possible. They're not going to be perfect by any means, but I want to make them as close as they can be. So once I had that finished, it was time to start moving on to my paper that my clipboard would be holding. So what I needed to do was first measure out how big I needed to make this. So I made mine about 3 3/4 inches across, and then I went back, I measured off camera how long I needed to make this, and I went for about 4 1/2 inches. Now this is just a plain white piece of cardstock, and then I had this border die on hand. I'm just going to be using the circle part of this just to cut right into that paper and make a piece of notebook paper. Now if you don't have this die like I have here, you can just use a circle punch and then cut like a little triangle towards those circles that you punch into the paper. You could also use a regular like binder punch that punches in the little holes on the side of a paper. You could use that, or you could just use a regular hole punch, punch 3 little holes on your paper and make it a piece of binder paper. So again, use what you have on hand. So once I had that done, I went ahead and I kept checking back to make sure everything was fitting together properly. So that's where I am now. I've got my clipboard, I've got my piece of paper, and now it's time to start dressing this piece of paper up. So included in this set are these little dash lines. Now these are for a planner. They're sized to fit in those little planner squares that you see on so many of them. But I'm going to use this to make the lines on my notebook paper. So I've got some Angel Sky Memento ink. I'm not sure what it's called. It's a light blue dye ink. any light blue ink would work. So I'm just stamping this a couple times, making 2 rows of lines here. So this isn't a regular sheet, it would be more like a note-taking sheet of paper, I guess you could say. So I'll go ahead and continue to stamp this one on top of the other until I fill in the entire piece of white cardstock here. Now once that was completely finished, it was time to start moving on and decorating this little piece of notebook paper that I created, and that's where I started pulling off those little bitty icons that are on the bottom of the stamp set. I just put several on acrylic blocks, and I'm going to be using Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp these. These are going to be like little hand doodles that you would see on somebody's notebook. I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I did a lot of doodling. I didn't like to pay attention so much. I learned better from the book than from a teacher, if that makes any sense. But once I had all those little icons stamped, I came back in with some of the more solid arrows here, and I stamped them in what I would consider pen ink colors. So blue, green, and red is what I went for. Then I brought out my alcohol markers and I started coloring in those little hand-drawn doodles that I'm using on this paper. I'm using rainbow colors here, and I threw in a few different colors as well. Some teals, some kind of mint green colors, hot pinks, and then I wanted to create a post-it note. I wanted to create a lot of layers on this card. So I could have gotten out a regular post-it note, but that would have been a little flimsy for the card. So I cut out a small rectangle, or kind of an off square, I guess you could say. I cut that out from some white cardstock. You could use colored cardstock as well. I just colored mine in with some alcohol marker right onto that to color it in the color of a post-it note. Now I went ahead and stamped that washi tape stamp that is in that stamp set. There are actually like 4 different ones in there. I chose this one with the little arrows on it, and then I just fussy cut it out very quickly. This was really simple to do. It was 2 straight lines and then little triangles out of the ends. Now on this post-it note, this is where you get to customize it. So I stamped January 7th, so that would be the recipient's birthday that I'm going to be giving this card to. You can use whatever day and the number of their birthday to go along with the recipient of your card. And after I stamped that little 7 right there, I went ahead and stamped the little birthday icon as well, and that I just did all in black dye ink. Now, the great thing about this is that January 7th is actually kind of in like a hand-drawn font, so it really looks like somebody took a pen and just wrote a reminder to themselves on a post-it note. Now it was time to start putting this card together. I did add a few of the solid stars from that little stamp set as well. I stamped those in black dye ink. So I started off with the base of my clipboard, my craft cardstock, and I put that down with double-sided adhesive onto the card base. Next up was the notebook paper. I just put 2 pieces on there. I didn't put any adhesive on the little flaps of there. I wanted them to be kind of hanging out, if you will. I could make some of them go up a little bit for a little bit more texture and dimension. Once I had that down, I put it on a little cockeyed too. Then I added my little clipboard holder on the top, and I put that on with some dimensional adhesive. Then it was time to add on my little post-it note. I have my washi tape here. That's going to be holding my post-it note onto my clipboard. So I put some adhesive on the back of it, double-sided adhesive, and then I will place that piece of washi tape right at the top of that post-it note. Again, I kind of put it off kilter. That just gives a nice appearance and makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. On top of that post-it note, I put 2 pieces of adhesive just on the top so it wouldn't be adhered on the bottom like a real post-it note. And then it was time for my sentiment. So I pulled out my Hello Sentiment stamp set, and I stamped the word happy on a piece of white cardstock. Now I'm using my MISTI here so I can get a nice bold black sentiment, and I am stamping that with some black dye ink. Now once that was done, I'm going to go ahead and take my paper trimmer and just cut along the bottom of the sentiment, making sure I don't cut any of the letters. So I'm cutting right up to those letters in a straight line. I'll do that along the bottom of this, so right up to the end of that Y. Then I'll go in between the Y and the P, the 2 P's, and then also I went ahead and did it from the side up until the first point of that P. Then on the top, I'll do the same thing. The only one I had to cut around here was that H, so that was just 2 straight lines. That one was pretty simple and easy to do. Now you can see here, I thought about leaving it just like this, but I knew that I could not cut straight lines, so I came back in with my paper trimmer, you'll see, and I cut in between each one of those letters on the bottom as well. Now this is a little bit tricky to do. If you have a paper trimmer like me, all you need to do is make sure you look at your arrows on your little cutter that you have there, and it should line up perfectly. If you don't, you can always use your scissors, or you can just draw 2 straight lines with a ruler and then follow that with your scissors. That would be pretty easy to do as well. So now I'm going to fussy cut around the bottom of those just to release the paper and make basically a straight line sentiment that just has the really high parts and the low parts of the sentiment hanging off. So I'll just quickly fussy cut around that. I am leaving a white border. And then to finish off that sentiment, I'm going to stamp birthday on a piece of black cardstock. I'm using Versamark ink here so I can come back in and heat emboss that with some white embossing powder. Now that happy that I created on that strip of white cardstock, I attached that to the bottom of my clipboard with dimensional adhesive. And then I took that birthday, cut it out into a rectangle, and attached that right at the bottom, kind of like a piece of label tape that you would see. So this card I went with very graphic. Now the last thing I did was add some sequins. If you are making this card and you don't want to add sequins, maybe you want it more masculine or whatever, you could choose to add some splatters. You could add glossy accents, Nuvo drops, enamel accents. You could add little buttons, whatever you want to, just to kind of dress it up a little bit. I'm using glossy accents and some clear sequins just to embellish this a little bit, give it a little shine and a little sparkle. Once that was finished, this completely finished the card off for today. This is different from a card that I normally make. I love the way it turned out, though. I had a lot of fun kind of puzzle piecing all the little elements together and creating my version of a clipboard without having an actual clipboard die. So using things I already had on hand to create another object, it's a win-win for me, and I love the way it turned out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. There are a few links you can click on to the left, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching again, and happy crafting.